Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Regina Fitzpatrick, and I am the co-chair of the Marketing Committee of the Women's Professional Network. We are excited to welcome the TSU and JSL community to today's Story of Success event in celebration of Women's History Month. Before our honored speaker is introduced, I would like to say a few words about the Women's Professional Network and encourage you to become a member, or if you are already a member, to consider joining a committee or serving on our advisory board. More on that in a minute. The Women's Professional Network is a local chapter of the American Council on Education, serving Thomas Edison State University and the New Jersey State Library. Founded in 2012, our mission is to empower women and make sure their voices are heard and elevated in both the higher education and library fields. We provide educational programming and networking opportunities for members, plus the wider TESU and JSL work community. We are proud to be celebrating over 10 years of excellence and hope to continue serving our organizations for many more years. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Angela Chapman, the Programs Committee co-chair, who will be introducing our Story of Success speaker, Dr. June DePonte Sernak.
Thank you, Regina. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. June DePonte Sernak. June is the Statewide Diversity Leadership Officer for the Center for Family Services, providing cultural competency leadership for DMHAS agencies throughout New Jersey. Most recently, June was the Dean of Lifelong Learning at Rowan College at Burlington County, Senior Adjunct Professor teaching Marketing and Management, and founder of the President's Advisory Council on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. June also served as Executive Director for the American Red Cross, serving Burlington, Camden, and Gloucester counties, and serves on their statewide Diversity and Inclusion Committee after working in corporate telecom for 25 years with MCI, Nextel, Sprint, and sales and marketing. She currently serves as an honorary commander emeritus for Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst, board chair and diversity committee chair for the Alice Paul Institute, and board trustee of Burlington County Military Affairs Committee. She is also a member of the Distinguished Alumni Board for Strayer University and adjunct professor for Wilmington University. June studied marketing at Montclair State University, has an MBA in management from Strayer University and a doctorate of education from Wilmington University in organizational leadership and innovation. She is a lifelong resident of New Jersey with her husband, Michael, and daughter, Alyssa. Please join me in welcoming Dr. June DePonte Sernak.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today, especially on Women's History Month. It's just a wonderful time for us to be here together today. And I just want to share a little bit more about how I got started and some of my background to some of the things that I've been talking about. I know my resume seems like I've had a lot of different lifetimes, but in actuality, I grew up in a small part of Southern New Jersey in Burlington County and Burlington City, to a very diverse family. My mom's family is African-American and Italian, and my dad's family is Native American. We're part of a tribal community for the Powhatan-Lenape tribe in Burlington County, and also the Nanticoke-Lenape tribe in the Southern New Jersey area. I thought everybody's family looked like mine. I thought that this was just an amazing blend of all kinds of nationalities and ethnicities, and just that everybody really blended well together. And I had no idea growing up in that blended family that we were really unique at the time. It was something that I knew that there weren't a lot of people that looked like me that were on television or on magazine covers. But my grandmother on my mother's side raised 12 children, my mom being one of the oldest. And it was just such a lovely environment to be brought up in. Just seeing her operate her family better than a CEO for most major organizations was also just a way for me to grow up and actually emulate some of the traditions that she had, and just the sense of belonging that she created for all of us within our family. My dad's parents owned a produce market in Haddonfield, New Jersey called Gladys's Market. And I just knew that she was one of the first entrepreneurs that I've ever saw as a woman that had her own business and was wildly successful for many years. They were married for 68 years and worked side by side at their market. what's been lovely is for me to be able to take all those attributes together and to really have such a loving environment to grow up in. What I wasn't prepared for was real life. I wasn't prepared for middle school and high school. I wasn't prepared to realize that I was a little bit different. Sometimes when you come from a mixed background, you're not 100% anything, so you don't really fit in as well as you would like. So a lot of those circumstances that so many young people are uncovering are things that I kind of took for granted because I always had my family to rely on. And really the story for me kind of began when I got to high school and it was time to look at colleges. And I thought, I'm a fairly decent student and I'm active in a lot of programs and this should be a really great experience for me. And I got to meet my high school guidance counselor. We sat down and discussed what my options were for college. And she looked at me and she said, June, you're not college material. You're a minority. You should learn to type. You should go in a minority workforce program. But because you are a minority and Native American, you qualify for government cheese. At that exact moment in my life, I think that was one of the first epiphanies that I had that the world wasn't fair and equitable, and that I really needed to rethink what it was that I really wanted to get out of what it is that I was doing. I was embarrassed because I thought, oh my goodness, does that mean that we're uneducated? And does that mean that we're poor? And what does that really mean for me? What does that mean for me moving forward in my life? Did I not have chances and opportunities? And as things would have it, I came from that supportive family that said, no, you will go to college and you can do whatever you wanted to do. And my family worked really hard for me to get to that particular point. So clearly I've had my fair share of education, but that was a turning point for me to actually start to really think about what it is that I wanted to do and how I wanted to represent myself and what I really wanted to fight and advocate for in my life. Going into the college atmosphere was, incredibly enlightening, especially thinking that I was right outside of New York and I love New York City. And I thought this was just a great atmosphere because it was a melting pot that I could just blend in really naturally. And I had so many different experiences with that, which really led me into the work that I've been able to do over my entire career. Starting out in telecommunications was a great building block. I always knew that I wanted to work in corporate America, and I thought that would be a great experience for me. But it's been something that's also given me some additional perspectives. And now looking back on things, there were things that, especially for women, I was very frequently the only woman in the room, at the only woman at a table, and definitely the only woman of color at a table that was really not represented by a lot of women, especially in different fields like the tech fields and the engineering fields. I don't think back then I honestly understood the depth of what that really was. And it's been really something that over the years I've reflected back on how fortunate I was to have some mentors during that time period that not only looked out for me as a person, but also looked out for women in general to give us an opportunity to share our voices and to be really responsible for really getting ahead and to also elevate other women that were in those programs. It wasn't always easy and it wasn't always fair. And there were some times where you wonder why in the world are you put in this predicament to have to fight so hard for these missions. And then you realize that there are always other people watching you and learning behind you. And it gives you a way to be able to continue to elevate the work that you're doing and to be able to continue to speak to others and be able to share those stories with them as they go along as well and to give them encouragement and hope. What I didn't experience, anticipate experiencing was after 25 years in corporate America that I would be part of a corporate downsizing. It wasn't unheard of in the telecommunications space to be really flooded with so many different opportunities for the connections for companies to, really be combined and have mergers and acquisitions. And at that particular time in my life, my daughter was young and I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I've only known this space. I've only known corporate America. And a friend of mine who was an engineer at MCI with me and at Sprint with me said, I have a great job for you. You'll be wildly happy and you'll make absolutely no money. And that happened to be the job as the executive director of the American Red Cross for Southern New Jersey. And he was 100% right. Loved that position, loved that role, loved the volunteers, loved the opportunity to work with the community. And I got a chance to look at the difference between working in a for-profit organization and some of the leadership potential that was there, and then also see on the nonprofit side how hard it was to fund develop, but then how also it was to support people that were in need. The disaster services piece, the blood services piece of the Red Cross and the international piece is such an overwhelming understanding of what they do globally that it put everything into perspective. One of the last events that I went to in corporate America was a 4-day sales conference that was held in Florida at the Ritz-Carlton. And there were 600 people at that sales conference, and it cost $10 million for 4 days. When I got to the American Red Cross, $10 million was our budget for the state of New Jersey for the entire year for disaster services. And I started to realize how important it is to make choices and to look at things in a way that gives you an opportunity to really use your skill set, but also do good for humanity. And I think those are the things that I started to take with me through the rest of my career. I was fortunate that along with working at the Red Cross, I was able to teach. So I took an adjunct position at Rowan College in Burlington County, and was actually given the opportunity to work there full time as a Dean of Lifelong Learning and create their first ever diversity, equity, inclusion panel for the president's office. And what that did was it really brought all these experiences together, because I could see where the students, the faculty, and the community could really take a combined effort to really think about what it's like for all types of equity, not just race, but gender and things that happen for accessibility, and just every aspect of that intersectionality, and what we can do to make a difference for people to feel not only that they belong, but that they have a voice for everything it is that they need. That was just a tremendous opportunity that I was given to be able to start that, and to start many of the employee resource groups that were on that campus and many of the student groups. And then that led me into the role that I'm in today, which has been just a delight to work with mental health and addiction agencies throughout the state of New Jersey to take a lot of those same experiences and figure out, how do we eliminate stigma and bias? What are the ways that we can help populations of people that really do not get the equitable respect that they deserve in the community? But it also gives us an opportunity to come together as an entire agency, an entire demographic agency, to be able to bring everyone together for that hope that brings us forward. I'm thrilled that kind of the next steps of this have been just a great opportunity for us to look at healing and look at some of the other ways that we can have better coping mechanisms. And these are the things that I think that having a level of education, but a broader view and a span of understanding, has just been a fantastic opportunity for us to continue to have some of those conversations, and how important that is. I think that one of the things that I always share with especially the young women that I work with in my volunteer space is that I was fortunate to always be able to raise my hand whenever there was a new project or a new event, that something that I could participate in. And by raising my hand, it gave me new experiences. I was able to really take on some additional roles that have helped me not only build my resume, but also introduce me to people that I might not have had the opportunity to meet over the years. And that's probably one of the single best things that I'm doing even today, is to share that experience with the community groups that I support. I absolutely adore working with the military. I've done that since my days at the Red Cross as an honorary commander. I had the opportunity to actually shadow senior leadership at the military base, meet with them and their families while they're in New Jersey for several years, but be able to also show them our New Jersey, show them all the things that we're known for, and be able to welcome them in. And it's been such a delight to be able to meet people that have shared experiences and lived all over the world, raised their children in multiple locations, and have fought for our country, and really have given everything for us to be able to have the luxuries that we have in this country. And also for things like working with the Alice Paul Institute, being their board chair is also one of the highlights. For those of you not familiar with Alice Paul, she is one of the original suffragists. She came about in 1920, was in charge of leading the suffrage movement for the women's right to vote in the 19th Amendment in the early 1920s. And she has her childhood home in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, which is an open historic location for anyone to come visit and to see part of the history. She has her adulthood home in Belmont Hall, which is in Washington, D.C., not too far from the Library of Congress. But what's been more amazing, not only is Alice's life story of her 90 plus years on this earth, fighting for equality for women and for gender justice, but also all the women that came before Alice that really started this movement. The Iroquois women, women like Sakala Sa, who were Native Americans that started this journey long before in their matriarchal tribal communities. From the other women that we see throughout all of history, the Deltas from 1913, the other women from the Divine Nine that were always in that space to be able to speak and advocate for women. And now that we're able to bring all these things together at the Alice Paul Institute, we just celebrated the centennial of the Equal Rights Amendment that still isn't ratified in the Constitution, that we're still diligently working to make sure that we do have that gender equality and that we get some of the rights and things that we really need to be able to support us nationally. So we still have a lot of work to do, and we still have a little bit more to go from getting those rights advocated for us. And right now we're going state by state, but it's so important for us to be able to stand up for the things that we believe in. I've been really fortunate to advocate not only for the work that we do at Alice Paul, but also work with our Girls Leadership Council, who have taken on fights such as period poverty, being able to help set up period pantries for people throughout the state of New Jersey that don't have access to feminine hygiene products, to work with maternal health issues, to talk a little bit about what it's like to be in the communities that really are underserved from a healthcare perspective in the mental health space. And then also to think about in that maternal health space, how important it is for us to make sure that people are listened and heard and have access to the right equitable experiences. And then also taking that same experience and moving it forward to the next generation of women that are coming up behind us. And it's just been a pleasure to be able to take advantage of taking all those experiences together and be able to share that and focus on all those types of areas as well. So I'm happy to also talk about a few other areas as we have maybe some additional questions or thoughts about some other things I can share.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that wonderful presentation. Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Wilson, and I am the other co-chair of the marketing committee in the Women's Professional Network. So I'll be facilitating the question and answer portion of today's program. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A section of Zoom below. So I'll get started with a couple of our questions from the Women's Professional Network. So my first question is, what is your proudest professional accomplishment?
I really think that my proudest accomplishment was to finish my doctoral program. I actually started to write my dissertation, and my professor said, June, you cannot help other people in the space of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging until you feel comfortable with who you are in your own skin. And as I was writing this, I had to really take a step back. I had to think about some really hard things and some hard conversations in my life. I had to talk with family members and really become more open to being accepting and understanding. And there were times where it was such a hard pass, because you do start to realize that there are laws and things that are prohibitive, that my family members went through some really horrible atrocities, some historical injustices that I wasn't aware of. I always say my grandmothers were wonderful women, both born in 1911, both had vastly different experiences, even for their ability to vote based on their nationalities that they were. But they told us the unicorn and glitter version of life. I didn't realize that our family on the Native American side came through to avoid the boarding homes that were separating Native American children from their families. And I didn't realize that being mixed in America was illegal until the 70s. So families couldn't be together the way that you see today, the way we are really fighting and advocating for families that come from, multiple, generations and multiple ethnicities. By the time I got done that work, I thought this is the accomplishment that I was looking for. This was a way that I can help share this with other people and to let people know that we've all taken some sort of journey through this. But the more we know about true history and we know about laws and we know what we're responsible for, the more we can stop any of these atrocities from happening again. So I think that was a great accomplishment for me, especially being told that I was not college material from the beginning, and to get that far is something that I'm really proud of the work, and I'm glad to be able to use that work in writings since then as well.
Now, you mentioned that statement. I take that statement personally because I was someone who was told that I wasn't college material as well, and look at me now. So what's your advice to anybody else who gets told that just based on their identity, whether it be race, sexual orientation, gender? What do you have to say to those individuals?
I say find your people. When you find the right people and believe in yourself, because it's really important for us to have that resiliency within ourselves and believe in ourselves, because when the powers that be get tough, we have to rely on ourselves. Not everybody's going to be in our corner, so you have to learn to clap for yourself, but find your people that will help elevate you. And it doesn't have to be a whole audience of people. It could be one or two people in your life. But I was very fortunate to have the people that I had around me that reminded me that I had the potential to do those things, that reminded me that success was something that was ahead of me, and that even though times were tough, that I would be able to get through that and be able to achieve all the things that I did. But it took a little while. And there were people, I always say life is kind of like that elevator where some people have to be escorted off at different levels because they might not be going where you're going. I did have to let some people go. I had to let some family members go. And it's really okay. And that's the other thing that you have to learn to be with, that it's really okay to kind of move on. And you don't have to tell everybody everything. You can move, kind of in silence, but you really have to find those people that are going to be supportive of you in the work that you want to do. And don't let anybody, take that away from you. Education is something that no one can take from you once you've achieved it.
Excellent. Okay, we have a question in Q&A.
Sure.
So who were the educators or community leaders in the city of Burlington that inspired you to become the amazing woman you are today?
Well, I have to give props to my grandmothers. My grandmother on my mom's side, Mary Elizabeth O'Farrow, she barely stood at 5 feet tall. She used to take all of the grandkids to school every day and have to sit on a phone book because she was so short. She jumped in her Gran Torino and it was hard for her to reach the pedals. But she had such a loving, guiding way that when I would come home and say that I was picked on by, insert whatever group that was starting to, to taunt me at that time, and she would sit me down and she goes, okay, June, this is what's going to happen. This is how we're going to handle it. Or even when I just thought I was having a bad day, she would say, this is the way we're going to handle things. And that grace of giving grace, I think, was one of the kindest things that she showed to me, was that you don't have to always react to people. You don't have to be nasty and you don't have to lower your standards, but you can hold your head high. And that really has stuck with me. There are times where I'm put in situations where I don't immediately respond. I take a moment because I try not to do anything out of haste, and I like to be able to know what I'm dealing with. But my grandmother really showed that to me. She just showed me that you can have grace and remain control and remain very together, but put people in their place when they need to be. And I think that was, she was my guiding force, 110%.
Wonderful. All right, so this next question is going to require you to reflect on your professional journey.
Sure.
So how has being a woman impacted or affected your professional journey?
Being a woman has given me a couple different perspectives. I changed a few things over the years. Like when I first had my daughter and I would be asked to go on a business meeting, and I'd have to think about all the things that I needed to do before I could go on that business meeting. And then I realized the men that I worked with didn't have to think about any of that. They just had to go. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is not going to work for me. And it took me a minute to put things into perspective, to say, okay, that's not going to work for me. There were times that there were opportunities ahead of me and I chose not to take those because it wouldn't have been for the best interest of the life that I was building all the way around. I think that I learned to handle myself differently. I learned that when I first was coming up, this was before the Crown Act. This was before women could kind of be authentic with not only how they looked, but how they dressed and jewelry and everything like that. Trying to fit into places, I think we did ourselves a disservice. We didn't get a chance to really speak the way we needed to and to be heard in meetings. And I think that we took a lot of risks to be able to back some things up. So there were some days where we had to have some tough conversations. But I think where we have gotten so much better is we put our foot down and we said, no, we deserve that. We deserve to be in a better position. I've taken jobs where I've made less money because the work was important to me. So I really had to look at who did I want to be, and what was it that I really wanted out of life. And sometimes that's not easy. I was married once before. That didn't really work out for me. I didn't think I would ever get remarried again. I do like this husband. He's really nice. So we're going to keep him. He's pretty cute. But it took a lot for me to find that partner, because it's either you only have two choices, either a supportive partner or no partner at all. And that's kind of where I was at that point of my life. So I think being a woman, when you want that seat at the table, and there are times where the table's not for you. So you have to read the audience that you're with, but don't let them take advantage of you. And if it's not for you, then always have a plan B and C if that's not going to work out, so you have other places to go. I think that was the one thing that I learned in business, that I wanted to have options. So if I was going to be put in a position that was not going to work for me, and I was a couple times, I have to admit, I was in an environment in a real estate conglomerate that invited me to a business trip and suggested, and I use the word suggested lightly, that I perform duties that were not part of my job description on that business trip. And I blatantly declined and said, you have the wrong girl, because that's just not where I was going in that. And a couple months later, they told me that my job was eliminated. But I would get an exit bonus if I didn't press charges. And I thought, you know what, if I did go after this organization, I wouldn't have succeeded. They're just a big conglomerate. But I could just do what I needed to do and have my own exit strategy. And I moved on to something else that worked out so much better for me. So I feel like, you know what, some days people show you who they are, and you just have to believe it. So as a woman, just use that intuition, and just, I hate to say it, we have to be on guard, but we do have to be on guard, because not all women support women either. So it's a good thing to be able to have a backup plan, to be able to keep yourself educated, and to pay attention, and really raise your hand for those things that could really help you out going forward. I met a lot of great people by joining in some other groups that most people didn't want to get involved with.
Wow. All right. So in that answer, you discussed a lot of moments where you had to balance and juggle a lot of responsibilities. So amongst the members of the Women's Professional Network, this topic actually came up. So I was wondering if you can hopefully give us some tips. How do you maintain, and I hate to use this term, but this is what we use, how do you maintain a work-life balance in your professional journey?
So I think you can have it all, just not all at once. And I think that you have to make your choices. So, and I'm not saying this is 100% right, but when I had my daughter, I was a single mom. I took my daughter with me everywhere. I would go to board meetings. My daughter would be in a stroller. We would be together on things. I would take her with me on trips that I had to go on. And she was just a part of the things that I was doing. But I also made sure that she didn't miss out on anything that she was doing as well. So there were times that I had to juggle a few things or say no. And that's where you have to kind of decide what's important at that particular moment and what's also important for the big picture. Not everybody has financial freedom to be able to make some choices, or have great options for childcare or so many things. So I totally understand how hard it is to be able to do those types of things. But I try to incorporate things as much as possible. I wanted my daughter to see that when I went back for my master's degree, that when I went to the library, she came to the library with me and she would read a book next to me. Mommy's learning this, so we can do this later on. And so there were a lot of things that really happened. Ironically enough, by the time she got to school, I had a couple of parent-teacher conferences where they're like, your daughter said she doesn't want to play house like the other kids. And I had to have that conversation like, well, that's perfectly fine. So there were some things that at first I thought, oh, good Lord, my daughter's going to be just tough as nails. And now at almost 25 years old, she is. She moved out of state. She took a different job. She's living her best life. And I'd like to think that she saw that you can do multiple things and follow your dreams and passions. And it's really worked out all the way around. And I couldn't be happier or prouder of her for making those choices. Granted, as the mom in me was like, you want to move? You want to leave me? What are you doing? But I thought I raised a really good human who saw that you can have potential and you can make choices and you can do some of those things. So, and I would also just tell people, don't look at other people and compare yourself. There's always somebody who's got more of something, less of something, anything else. Be happy with that glass being half full. Don't worry about the rest of it. Things will come, and the things that you can't even imagine, I try to live in the moment as much as possible. I also really do a lot of self-care. I enjoy my space and my freedom, and it's little things. I mean, whether it's having coffee with a friend, whether it's getting my nails done, which I'm obsessed, or watching Hallmark on a weekend. I love Hallmark Christmas movies. That's just another area. Just not that's too much information, but give yourself grace and just enjoy the little moments, and reward those things, because you know what, life is fleeting and you don't know what's around the corner. So I'd rather women really just embrace all the things that's in front of them and enjoy the ride and enjoy the waves that are happening. I think that's the best way to balance everything, because your mental health is above all the most important thing, and you can't do anything if you're not healthy, physically or mentally. You're going to do no one any good if you don't feel well. So take care of yourselves above everything else.
Very true. All right. So as you know, this is our Women's History event. So our next question is going to center around that. So what does Women's History Month mean to you?
The Women's History Month for me, considering that it was only made Women's History Month 44 years ago, which, there's that. It's the women that came before us. It's the women that put everything on the line to help us to get to where we are. In the Native American, traditions, we look at 7 generations. So whatever we do today is going to impact the next 7 generations. So if you're not recycling or if you're not taking care of yourself, it really impacts those forward. Think about the women 7 generations before us that went through what they went through. Think about the women that walked through the Underground Railroad. Think about the women that stood up through injustices. Think about all those types of things. Because I think about what I had been able to do what Alice Paul did. She was incarcerated multiple times and force-fed and just put through so many things to get to just the right to vote. And it wasn't even everybody had the right to vote when she did this. It was only still a small portion of the population, but she fought hard for that. So I think about women's history being something that those narratives need to be told. I love the stories of when I hear, especially women like from the New Jersey area, but women that have made such a difference that are not on anybody's radar. And there's so many women that have created businesses and created products and have just fought the fight that I love to share those types of narratives. I really think that that's what is so important to me, is to tell the stories of those women that came before us, tell the stories of their fight, tell the stories of their resiliency, and realize that we're cut from that same cloth. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, and we owe it to ourselves and to them to keep going, because somebody's going to watch us do this, and it's going to benefit them as they go forward as well.
Great. Okay, so if you could meet any influential woman, she can be 7 generations before us, that's allowed, who would you choose? What questions would you ask her if you could meet her?
So there's a woman named Gerda Lerner, and Gerda came to the United States by, through Ellis Island. And as a child, her town was taken over by the Nazi regime, and she knew she needed to leave. And at that point, for women to travel alone through Ellis Island, they thought you were a prostitute. So you had to pretend you were married to someone else. And when she came to this country, she settled in Harlem because she said that's where, as an immigrant, she felt that she belonged. when I look at her story and I look at the movies that her and her husband created back in the 50s and 60s, that really were true testaments to racism. I would love to sit down and talk to her about those experiences of what that was like to have to flee your home, have to leave your family to go to what you knew was a better place, but how to stand up to form in the education system to create some of the first narratives for Black history, to be able to help women get educations. To me, that level of teaching women and to that education piece, I find fascinating. And I really love her story for the things that she did in her life. There's a story about her of why women climb mountains. That's a documentary about her life. As I start to watch some of these things, it really resonates with me, because sometimes I feel like, especially being multiracial, you feel like you're kind of sitting on the fence with certain things, and like you left one thing behind to get something else, and you just feel like, man, if you're sitting on the fence, then how's that viewed? And I really would love to have heard her perspective as she was trying to navigate through this and start a new life here. I just think it's a beautiful story, but talking about resiliency, some days I'm like, oh gosh, I don't even know how I'm going to get up today and get dressed and get to work. And these women are fighting for injustices that are unbelievable. Should be on the top of my list.
Great. I'll have to look her up.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so tomorrow is International Women's Day, and this year's campaign theme is Inspire Inclusion. So in your opinion, what else should individuals and organizations do to inspire inclusion for women?
I think that we need to participate in things that are different from what we're doing. I think that we should take advantage of learning about people that have had so many other types of things in their lives and be open to understanding what their plight is. I'm a firm believer in participating to learn about things. I think that food and music are great equalizers and a great place to start. I love that inclusion piece of it, to make sure that people know that when they walk into a room that they deserve to be there. I think if I had a magic wand for that, that would be one of those things that I would make sure that everybody felt like they belonged in the places that we are. But learning a little bit more about someone else, or about someone else's journey, or someone else's, background, ethnicity, experience, really helps us reform, how we are. I've changed so much during my journey of education, because I've learned so much about history, and I've learned about ethics, and I've learned about so many things that were not inclusive, that I think I can't unsee it now. So I take that with me, and I hope that I remind myself in every space that I go into to look around and to smile and to welcome other people in there, so they never feel like they don't belong. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that we can do, is to I know not everybody is an extrovert like I am, but it really is still possible to embrace all these other things and be able to share that with the next person. Share those stories, open up it and share a little bit more about things that you enjoy, and maybe foods that you've had that you grew up with, or places that you've been to that you enjoy. I think making those memories and documenting those, that's really the inclusive piece. I had the opportunity of going to Alaska with my daughter over the summer, and really had a true experience of not only kind of climate change and global warming, but also a couple of the Native American tribes that are resident in those areas. And I was just fascinated with that. And I was just able to do some more research on it. And now I include that in a lot of the things that I do as well, because I think once you learn a little bit more about someone else, it just, continues to give you that breadth, and it makes you really interesting as well, because you have other things to talk about than somebody else.
Okay, so this next question is gonna be a little heavy. Okay. So how do you think the fight for gender equality will change over the next 50 years? And will we ever attain true equality?
I think that, in my humble opinion, that we are in a society, a patriarchal society, that someone always has to be on top. And because someone always has to be on top, that means somebody else has to be on the bottom. And until we get to more of a non-holistic, environment where we're that individualistic piece of us, is the dominant piece and we look at what's best for the whole, we're not going to see equality because we're not being fair to other people. We have too many people that they want to win. And it's just the nature of our history from colonization that you want to have somebody that has more natural resources and you want to take it away from them, and that puts somebody else on the bottom. And I think that that's the struggle that we have as people, is that we're not taking care of each other. We're not taking care of our neighbors. We're not taking care of our communities. And until we get to that piece where everybody's important, we're not going to have equality. It's not going to work. They're going to continue to have us be in a position where everybody's just going to be out for themselves. And that's the unfortunate part, because no one wins with that. And I would hope that in the next 50 years, there would be some additional things that were done, but we have women that don't think that they should have the rights to vote because they don't want to go against their husbands, or that they would be fearful of being, drafted into the military, any number of things that haven't happened yet. We still have people that are being elected into, government offices that don't think women should have the right to vote today in 2024. And we have so many things when it comes to gender injustices that I know we recently had the opportunity to meet with the FBI to talk about hate crimes. And I was floored with the number of hate crimes against the trans community that are being viewed for entertainment purposes. We're talking about millions and millions of views of videos that are online that people are seeing just for entertainment. Until we start to bring humanity back into our lives, I don't know that we can overcome this to the level that we want. And honestly speaking, it wouldn't take that much to be able to get to that point. I follow a really amazing practice that's part of the Kellogg Foundation, which is Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. And it's just a transformative way for us to think about our communities. It's done at the education level around the country, but it's helping us cope with things that are a little bit better. Our coping mechanisms are the only ways that we're going to be able to overcome these things. And even from a mental health and addiction perspective, we have to have better coping mechanisms to get through the hard times, because it's really, our communities are just falling apart from the inside out. And that's where I think that we can do better. We can do better for each other. And that's where the equity is going to come from. If we can be more inclusive to people, that no matter what they're going through. So, I mean, the struggle is real, and I hate to be a downer on this, but we have work to do.
Right. Speaking of work to do, you mentioned two issues that I'm not sure everybody who's on this presentation are familiar with. You mentioned period poverty and food insecurity. So those are really big topics. We don't have enough time for you to really go into the details of what they are. But could you summarize what the issues are, and could you give the audience some ideas as to how they can possibly help?
Sure. So period poverty, because if you're not familiar with this, imagine not being able to have access to feminine hygiene products at any stage during your lifetime as a woman. What we also found is that when we started to put period products, having a period drive, bringing things in. So not every culture can use every product. So there's some cultures that are not, comfortable with tampons, that might need to use other feminine hygiene products. So there's a respectful nature of this as well when it comes to inclusion. But when you start to put things into an open area like a library that anybody could access it, because it's already now, the governor did pass a law that it's in the school systems that it has to be mandated, thanks to Assemblywoman Gabby Mascaro, which was a 5-year fight to get that put into the New Jersey school systems. But now if you put it in the libraries, what we're also seeing is women that and families that are susceptible to domestic violence, a lot of those same products are the first things that are withheld from them during domestic violence situations. So having access to that in those open areas gives them an opportunity for dignity to have that as well. And also those in the transgender community that need to have those things during transition, it would be also beneficial for them to have places to go to that are neutral for them as well. So it's important to have drives. It's important to work with your local communities, areas like my agency, Center for Family Services, Alice Paul Institute. There's so many people that are doing really great work in this. Food insecurities is hitting 1 in 12 families in the state of New Jersey. that is such an important topic on so many different levels because it's a wide variety of areas. There are places that are giving away food at food pantries at astronomical levels. They're bringing them to people's cars again, so people don't feel like there's any stigma or bias against them coming into a food pantry to ask for help. However, a lot of the fresh fruit and vegetables are being used that many people don't know what to do with them because we're in a society of supersizing everything. It's cheaper to go to a fast food place and for an extra dollar get a bigger version of something, but those aren't really the healthy nutrients that will really sustain you. One of the things that I was able to do this year is I wrote a book called My Mom's Market. It's a kids coloring cookbook, which was designed based on my family's Native American market and my recipes from my mom. And I shared it with the Food Bank of South Jersey just on a whim. And we started talking about it, it turned into this coloring book. I've been able to give away $1,200 back to the food bank. So for every $500, it feeds 1,300 people. So when you think about what happens in our communities that they need to be fed, we need to normalize some of these things of the fact that we need to help people. We need to show people ways that they can sustain themselves from a nutritional perspective. And we need to not have food deserts that prevent them from getting the healthy foods that they need. So that's another area from transportation or growing our own resources, things like that. Because if we don't sustain ourselves with healthier food, it's not helping us physically and mentally as we get older. And a lot of those things are really impacting us as we get older because we just have chronic illnesses that require medication that could be adapted with better health routines. So all those things are just really important. It's one of the top areas for maternal health issues in the state of New Jersey. It involves nutrition for the moms and for their children. But these are all things that we should just be aware of, that not everybody's in an easy spot right now. So if you can have the opportunity to give back to any number of those, you know, the Food Bank of South Jersey is a phenomenal organization. Oaks Integrated Care has pantries. There are a lot of mobile units that our commissioners run through our counties throughout the state of New Jersey. All really things that are prevalent for us to really take a look at and to help make sure that we're supporting people. And they can all use volunteers. They got to sort food, you know. They turn over at the Food Bank of South Jersey, they serve like 600,000 people a month. They turn over all that food every 22 days. So it's a room for a lot of corporations to come in and do volunteer work as well. But it's absolutely an amazing operation to get people fed. So that's my commercial for both of those things, just really important.
All right, well, I don't see any more questions in the Q&A, but I will ask a question that tends to come up a lot. Do you have any book recommendations on any of the various topics that you've discussed today?
So I really like, when we talk about racial healing, I like the Racial Healing Handbook by Dr. Annalise Singh. It's more of a workbook, but it helps you start to come to terms with who you are. And we change and we grow and we develop, you know, especially with our experience of things. And when you start to document some of those things, you get to really learn a little bit more about yourself and about where you came from, and that'll help you know where you're going. I also like Dr. David Livermore's book about leading with cultural intelligence. I think that we're in a space right now where, like I mentioned, we don't have to react to everything, but take that emotional intelligence and that cultural awareness and marry the two into cultural intelligence. It really could be life altering if we could look at people a little bit differently. If we could get rid of some of those stereotypical biases that we might have of another group of people. And think about what it is that you're saying and how you're saying it and what else could you learn from that group. There's so many other amazing things out there. I just invite people to look at things just a little bit differently and to be able to incorporate that cultural intelligence into things. I think that it makes us a much smarter group of people. The conversations are better, but it also helps us know what we need to do to make sure we move forward with equitable judgment in the work that we're doing.
Wonderful. I think that's a great place to end the conversation. So thank you on behalf of the WPN. Just thank you for this presentation. Thank you for the conversation. And thank you for helping us celebrate Women's History Month.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Yes.
Thanks for everyone joining us.
Yeah, so that concludes today's program, everyone. Thank you and have a wonderful day.